Last year on my channel, we talked quite a bit about McDonald's and a lot of the problems with the fast food industry slowing down as people have stopped seeing the value in it. And McDonald's has gone to great lengths to try to bring customers back into the store by creating the $5 meal deal in June of 2024 that was only supposed to last a month and has now been extended indefinitely, along with offering exclusive deals that you can only get through the app. And even that still hasn't been enough to bring business back for McDonald's because people just seem to be boycotting it still altogether. During the first quarter of 2025, McDonald's US comparable sales decreased by 3.6% year over year, according to its latest earning report. And this dip in sales contributed to the fast food chain facing a 3% decline in its operating income, which is its profit after paying operating expenses. So a 3% decline in profit might not sound like much, but for a big corporate giant like McDonald's, that translates into billions of dollars. And the reason I like talking about McDonald's is not because I care so much about what happens to them as a company or fast food in general. I don't even eat that stuff. But I think it's important to track it as another indicator of where the economy is headed and consumer spending trends. What are people doing with their money? Ultimately, I think that's one of the most important things to keep an eye on because it shows you how people feel about money, and where they spend their money is key to what people find valuable and what they don't. On the earnings call in May, McDonald's CEO Chris Kazimski, he said that macroeconomic uncertainty and pressures such as inflation are weighing on the consumer, and that has impacted sales more than the company expected, which is only half true. That is half of the story. I did a video about inflation the other day talking about just how bad it is right now. And yeah, I saw some of the comments in that video too. People saying, oh, things are great. You know, inflation's not nearly as bad as it was back in 2022. Michael, it's been coming down. Well, it still hasn't hit the 2% target. Core inflation still near 3%, and 2% supposedly the goal, which looks like we may never reach. And the latest inflation report has shown prices starting to go back up. So yes, inflation is definitely part of the equation, but it's not the only part of the equation. The other part of it, of course, is value, because that's something that fast food restaurants used to offer that a lot of people don't feel that they do anymore. The value for what you get for the money just isn't there anymore. Now, they've made attempts to change that, like I said, with the $5 meal deal and things like that, but apparently it's not enough, you know, because people don't like to get burnt. McDonald's and many other fast food companies already raised their prices pretty significantly before they came out with these deals and thought that consumers were just going to eat it, literally, but they didn't. So then they had to come up with these deals to try to get people back in, and it did work initially a little bit, but clearly it's not working to the level that they were hoping for. And so this is corporate greed on full display and showing you that these corporations cannot just get away with constantly raising prices on customers, and once they see that the prices have gotten too high, then kind of lower them again and hope to bring all their loyal customers back. Like I said, people don't like getting burnt. There was also an actual McDonald's boycott by the People's Union USA from June 24th through June 30th. And that was organized because of the frustrations over the fast food chain allegedly paying less taxes than its employees, which is pretty common for all corporations. A lot of these big corporations and billionaire CEOs have a lower effective tax rate than ordinary, average, everyday folks. That's not a secret. That's been the case pretty much forever. But they also had a problem with McDonald's dramatic price increases, its anti-union tactics, exploitation of global supply chains, and environmental loopholes, and its weak support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oh, we had to throw the DEI in there. We're going to boycott McDonald's because of that. And it kind of worked, because during the month of June, the number of customers that visited McDonald's declined by 2% year over year. But I don't want to attribute it just to that boycott. I'm sure it mostly has to do with the fact that people just don't see the value anymore. And a lot of Americans are becoming more and more health conscious, which is a great thing. People are waking up to the fact that, yeah, I probably shouldn't be eating this. I know it's fast and cheap and convenient, but it's not the best thing for me to put in my body. I can do better. And they're actually trying to organize a second boycott that's supposed to last the entire month of August of 2025. So we'll see if it's going to have another impact on McDonald's business moving forward. And this same group is actually encouraging people to stop shopping at Lowe's and Walmart during the month of August as well. The one good thing I think that's coming out of this protest and boycott is that this group is actually encouraging customers to shop at local businesses, buy directly from manufacturers, and buy from independent online retailers during these boycotts. So it is a nice idea, but it also is more inconvenient, and people love convenience. I know I certainly do. I'm guilty as charged when it comes to that. I like having all my stuff delivered to the doorstep. I don't like going to the store to buy anything. Other companies that have been boycotted by the People's Union USA are also companies like Amazon, Starbucks, and the Home Depot were all boycotted during the month of July. But beyond that, more people are protesting with their wallets is what's really happening. In fact, according to a recent survey from LendingTree, 31% of Americans have boycotted a business for various reasons, such as discrimination, political donations, affiliations, or religious messaging or practices. So it's kind of funny that people are actually looking at that stuff in terms of which business they want to shop at or which restaurant they want to eat at. Because I feel like no one ever really paid attention or cared about that in the past. This is only becoming a hot button issue now that political division has become a major thing in this country. In fact, according to this survey, 45% of Americans said they at least sometimes research a company's values or beliefs before purchasing. I mean, it's pretty shocking that 45% of people care about a company's politics or whatever before they buy from them. Now, I can definitely see that when it comes to like major things like what Target tried to pull with the transgender clothing and things like that. They got a huge backlash for stuff like that. But when it just comes to like political donations, I'm surprised that people are really that concerned about it. But they are, according to this. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing that people are standing up for their beliefs and voting with their wallet. I just don't know how much that's really going to have any major impact on things in the long run, because essentially we only have two political parties in this country, and they're both guilty of blowing up the deficit and passing laws that only favor elite or very poor people and excluding the middle class and things like that. So how much any of this is really going to make a difference in the end, I don't know. But things could be worse for McDonald's, kind of like WAG. Have you ever heard of WAG, the dog walking company? Yeah, well, they just filed for bankruptcy because apparently people aren't paying so many people to walk the dogs anymore. And I wish my wife was here next to me to comment about this, but things are a little bit different for her than for WAG, since she is just like an independent business and she has a lot of loyal clients that really love her and their dogs love her too. And that's a completely different relationship than what people that hire WAG dog walkers have. They just need somebody to come over, let their dog out or walk it for a little while. They don't really care who it is. They don't care about the personal connection with the animal. They just need it to get done because they're busy. So it is a very different business model. And to put into perspective, at its peak, WAG was worth about $650 million. And fast forward to today, it now has a value of less than $6 million. This company has just had all of the life sucked out of it. So WAG just filed for bankruptcy on July 21st in Delaware. And if the judge approves their bankruptcy, WAG will be delisted from the stock market and taken private by one of its biggest creditors, Retriever, which is kind of an ironic name for a company that has the most money invested into the company called WAG. And basically their excuse for going bankrupt is they said business changed dramatically after March of 2020. Once the pandemic started, more people were home and they just weren't hiring WAG dog walkers to come and walk their dog because people were at home, so they walked their own dog, which does make a lot of logical sense. Also, they had a big loan from Retriever in 2022 that had a stipulation in it that said they have to have a certain level of cash on hand at all times. And this year, WAG fell below that reserve and failed to find other creditors for a cash injection. So whenever that happens, bankruptcy it is. In fact, little side story here, funny enough, I just found out that this apartment complex that I'm staying at over here in California actually had their owner go bankrupt as well. Now this property I'm staying at is in receivership. So I don't know if the entire company's going down. They stopped making the payments on a lot of their different real estate loans across the Bay Area here. And one sort of misconception when you have a company that goes bankrupt doesn't necessarily mean they're going out of business. It can mean that, but in the case of WAG, like this, you have its biggest creditor, Retriever, that took over the company, is taking it private, and they're going to be restructuring WAG in a way that makes sense and hopefully is sustainable for them moving forward. So it's not like WAG is completely going away and you won't be able to use it anymore. It just means that the company as you know it is going to cease to exist, and there's probably going to be some significant changes in order to improve their business model. And I would almost be certainly willing to bet that there's going to be some price increases for the dog walking services or whatever else you're trying to hire from the platform in order for them to stay in business. And speaking of stay in business, did you know that the United States has a GoFundMe account now? They'd probably do a better job if they actually started an OnlyFans instead. Anyways, apparently you can now donate to the Treasury Department using PayPal or Venmo in order to help pay down the national debt. So as if the taxes that we pay are not already enough, because we're paying the highest tax rates in US history, which are also scheduled to go up with inflation now that the One Big Beautiful Bill has passed. So our taxes are at all-time highs, and so is the US national debt. And they're saying, well, you can help us out and pay extra if you want. Oh yeah, sure, I'll jump right on that. We are approaching a point where we have almost $37 trillion in national debt that just continues to climb. And so I guess the Treasury Department's getting desperate by offering this up as a potential option for people who want to help out. Now, actually, this program has been around for decades, but the reason it's coming out in the news right now is because you can now use PayPal and Venmo to make a contribution. You don't have to do it directly with the Treasury's website. But think about this. In the last 29 years, the total that's been donated towards the national debt has been $67.3 million, which is nothing for the $37 trillion in debt. And they say that the almost $68 million that's been donated so far is only enough to cover about 20 minutes of accumulating debt at its current rate. So 30 years worth of donations is worth only 20 minutes worth of debt right now. So by the time you get done watching this video, if you watch the whole thing, that entire $68 million has already been burned through. That's how scary it is. That's how fast we are burning through money in this country right now. And I think a lot of people don't realize how serious that is until you kind of grasp the reality of that. And you would think by making this donation that this would allow you to collect like a tax credit or something like that, right? Which honestly, for me, I would probably donate to it in lieu of paying taxes if I could, right? If that was an option, like if I could donate to paying off the national debt or pay my taxes, I would rather donate to the national debt because I think that does more good overall in the long run for this country than actually paying the taxes. But unfortunately, you don't get that choice, and this is just extra money on top of that. And they say here that even a generous donation is unlikely to make a significant difference. And they actually have a cap. The most you can donate is just under $1 million at $999,999.99. That's the limit, at least through Venmo. And to just give you an idea of how much the national debt has spiraled out of control, 40 years ago, the national debt was $907 billion, and fast forward to today, it is almost $37 trillion with a T. And remember, the one big beautiful bill that was recently just passed that everybody loves so much is just going to add an extra $3.5 to $5 trillion to that balance over the next decade. And then of course the interest on the debt is growing at about $1 trillion a year right now. So who knows what the deficit's going to be in 10 years from now. It's probably going to be well over 50 trillion. So let us know if you're going to be donating any of your hard-earned cash to paying off the national debt. I would love to hear from somebody who's actually doing that. And let me know how much you're actually donating and why you think it's going to matter or make a difference. Now, one thing I've talked a lot about on this channel is rising property taxes. And yeah, I'm all over the map today. We're just going to talk about a bunch of different random stories. But in Ohio, unfortunately, a lot of people have been losing their homes lately because of rising property taxes. This is something I have warned about time and time again, and a lot of people are experiencing this now. And it's all because of the explosive growth in property values, which raises assessed values, which ultimately raises your property tax bill. And really, this problem can be fixed with a simple answer, which is just placing a hard cap on property taxes. No matter how much your property value increases or how many levies are passed, under no conditions should the property owner be required to pay more than 5% of their federal taxable income from the prior year. So they're talking about capping property taxes for individuals in Ohio based on your actual income, not the value of your home, which I think is kind of interesting. Because that can really be fudged, guys. Like, even if you make a lot of money on paper, it can look like you don't make a lot of money. I think it should still be tied to home values. It should never be able to go beyond a certain cap, whatever they decide to put it at for the value of your home. But I think tying it to income could be a losing proposition. But they do say that this cap would only apply to private homeowners and only to their primary residence. So this would not apply to investors or corporations. And so by doing this, essentially they would be putting your tax liability based on your ability to pay rather than based on the value of your property. I think it's a good idea in the sense that it'll keep more people in their homes, but I think it's also unfair. And there's going to be a lot of loopholes that are going to be exploited with this from high income earners to pay significantly lower property taxes as well. And then, of course, you already have all the people crying and saying, oh, how are we going to operate the school system if we do this? That's like the number one concern. Nobody cares that people are losing their homes and literally becoming homeless or having to move in with friends and family. The only thing people care about is how are we going to pay for the schools? But Ohio is another one of these states that's looking at eliminating property taxes altogether, just like Florida. So that would actually be a much bigger problem for the schools and all the other local government systems that rely on property taxes than just pinning the tax based on how much people can afford to pay. Now, one other thing I want to bring up here, which is really important, is the amount of underwater mortgages is going up from where it was a year ago. The share of seriously underwater loans relative to outstanding mortgages stood at 2.7% at the close of the second quarter of 2025. And 1 year ago was at 2.4%, which means the amount of people who owe more on their house than it's worth is steadily increasing. And you might say, well, it's only 2.7% of all mortgage holders, Michael. That's nothing. Well, you're still talking tens of millions of people that are underwater on their mortgage. You know, people think 2.7% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at all the mortgage properties in the country, it comes out to tens of millions of people. So it is a lot. And the definition that they're using for underwater on your mortgage is actually pretty generous, because they're saying this is defined as people who have an unpaid mortgage balance at least 25% more than what their collateralized properties are worth. So you need to be at least 25% underwater to even qualify as underwater. So what about people who are only 5% underwater or 10% underwater? Like, the actual amount of people who are underwater on their mortgages are a lot more than we're being told right now. So just another thing to think about as all of these economic indicators are pointing toward a larger and larger recession looming. So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.